get started, I think one of the key questions on everyone's mind is that like if I'm an engineering leader, my CEO is sort of knocking on my door asking me how I'm using AI and sort of how am I adopting AI and what what are some of the practical first steps that you would recommend to an engineering leader who's just starting their journey in using generative AI in their software development and delivery outside of stuff like using Copilot or Cursor or Codient. Um, I think outside of that, what would you sort of recommend to teams that are just starting their AI journey?
Um, Maybe I can start. So,
Sure. Also,
yeah,
and if you want to talk about your own, like at smallest, how you guys use it internally, that would be super helpful as well.
yeah, for sure. So, see, one of the things, and this happens, I feel very rarely, but like someone, all the engineers in the team coming and saying that they want a certain tool. This is something that we have started to see happen. And I know you just mentioned don't talk about co-pilots, but Cursor Pro apparently is extremely good, and it increases the ROI of a good engineer by 10x. So
And Cursor Pro is a $20 a month version of
yeah,
Cursor. It's a paid version. Okay.
it's the paid version. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so the $20 a month version apparently is like much better than the free one. And we have so much like my team is like don't buy anything else for us. Just get us this and we'll deliver on time. So so this is something interesting I have seen, and I personally tried it myself. I mean it's crazy. So this is a place. Now, since we are a startup, our stack, and since we are also multimodal, like we have speech and
Mm,
our testing stack is very new. I mean, even testing speech is almost like a research scientific problem. So we have not seen a lot of AI tools help us in testing. Um, Even at the API level, I feel since there is so much, new thing, there are so many new things that keep coming up where the functionality changes. Sometimes it's not even clear something is a bug or a feature till
mm.
customer comes and tells you that. So we have not really adopted AI in testing too much, but that is a place where I do believe now going forward for some enterprise deployments, we will have to adopt it because we do not want to like waste time doing something that's already solved. So auto coding using Cursor Pro, testing, this is an interesting thing. And then finally, like for front end, like
Mm.
particularly we are seeing like quickly rolling out POCs using a Lovable or any similar sort of tool, just so that look like let's see if this even works, right? Like and then you kind of go and like do it properly. So this is quick POCs is something that we are seeing for front end projects at least where AI adoption happens fairly quickly.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest benefits is for product managers and previously PMs who couldn't code now can come up with a fully functioning prototype, like you said, using Lovable or Bolt or Replit or something like that. Come up with the scaffolding, take it to engineers, and sort of be able to convince them. I think at some point you're going to be able to see PMs become fully functional, and I do think the power shifts to somewhat more the creator side, so sort of product managers, designers, business people, or ideas, and all of that. I think the power shifts in some sense to those people because now they can come up with fully functioning prototypes, as you said.
Yeah, our designer is our product manager as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
You're going to see that mix, and engineers will probably sort of spend more time elsewhere as well. And I think this is going to be very interesting. Because you brought up Cursor Pro, one of the questions we are grappling with is some of the IP issues around using Copilot or Cursor. And essentially, there is a lawsuit happening in the US where OpenAI and Copilot are being sued because supposedly they trained on open source code. Now, it's making its way through the courts, but what we have seen, our clients, their worry is that if we use Copilot, and if I'm a product company who uses Copilot and it just so happened that it produces code that is open source, then that might lead to IP infringement issues. Have you guys thought about that, or have you guys sort of considered that or anything of that sort?
Honestly, yeah, we are new, but I would allow someone else to answer maybe.
Yeah, Ryan, Amit, anything?
Yeah, I think you also have to keep an eye on sort of optics in this industry. I was working
Yeah,
with a client, been working with a client for a year, right? At the very, even things are changing so fast. Even a year ago, we were talking about implementing OpenAI, and they're like, oh, our clients are going to be so nervous when they hear we're working with OpenAI. You have to move it to Azure. You have to do the OpenAI implementation of Azure. So we moved it there. Now it's not clear that our clients actually care. Everyone's like, okay, everyone's using OpenAI. I mean, the service agreement hadn't changed.
mm,
OpenAI's enterprise agreements were always that they couldn't train on your data if you're using the API, right? But now businesses are less scared of it. I mean, I think there is a practical worry of if the lawsuit will bleed over into your work, but I think really it's in practice it's the optics that are bleeding into your work. But look at the trajectory. I think a lot of these acceptance is growing pretty quickly. So if you pace it so that acceptance, if you reach acceptance by the time you're implementing it, then whatever.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is that it is also going to, I mean, that's a pitfall
yeah,
because of the yeah. So I was talking about the typical pitfall that I think is the machine learning model is as good as their training data, right? If everything is
yeah,
a copy paste, which may contain biases or gaps, or an AI system might optimize for metrics that inadvertently favor certain workloads or omit important factors, right? So I'm a little concerned about apart from the legal ramifications, but typically in the environments that I work, the general concern is the opaque nature of the AI decisions is problematic. The operations teams need results they can understand and verify. If it is unchecked, then this can lead to critical issues going unnoticed, or conversely, it can raise false alarms, which can be caused due to your biased logic, right? So what I have understood, and I'm working with my clients, is that the orgs needs to be wary of the techno solutionism, but we can't treat AI as a magical fix for all problems. So we need to remember that AI is tool to aid human decision makings, and we cannot replace it entirely, but we need to make sure that what there are different mechanisms to overcome these hurdles. One of the other,
yeah,
yeah, one of the other pitfall that I saw very recently as well, that there is a growing concern about the reliability and the drift concern, right? For example, if I am integrating AI into automation loops, it will introduce a new failure mode, right? So models can drift over time as data patterns change, right? So an AI trained on last year's system behavior may falter when the workloads or the configurations evolve. This can lead to degraded accuracy in predictions or recommendations if models aren't regularly retrained and monitored. That, as a practice, we suggest to our client as well. I think even Ryan and you probably must be doing something like that as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit of this pre-call, but I mean, one of the things we focus on at Plucky is making sure that that clients implement a sort of a feedback loop, right, and monitoring system, because it's so easy to get 60%, 80% of the prototype, right? You just throw in an open AI call, and it mostly works. But really making sure you're protected against those edge cases. You can't really use CI/CD in the same way
mm,
to automate testing of an LLM, right? Just because A is just cost inefficient, and how do you even test? I mean, there are ways, but the process of evaluating if a result is correct is much more complex for AI. So really investing in making sure you're watching what's going on, somebody is categorizing and detecting what problems there are, and then having a way to safely make an edit to fix it is really going to be the key to success in a lot of these things.
So on that piece, how are you thinking about evaluations? Like, how do you sort of advise clients on that are used to a deterministic system to change their processes to adapt to a probabilistic or stochastic system?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just first of all setting expectations, right? Like I think a lot of people come in with a lot of use cases of increasing accuracy, right? They say,
Mhm.
oh, like, this will be better. What if we made this better than a human? I don't like my customer success people. What if we just built an AI to replace them, right? That's not really that. I think that oftentimes it's an unrealistic expectation of what AI can do. AI in most cases is good for speed. It's going to be my line is like, yeah, I expect it to be about 75% as good as your average human, but
Yeah.
20, 30 times faster. So first of all, set that. Second is how do you do evaluations? It really depends on the use case. If you have something where it's just a fact-based answer, what's 2 plus 2? Well, okay, you just is the answer 4. Where it starts getting more complex
Yeah.
is when you have stylistic decisions. And in which case, I think, we've been playing around
Or
with things like a report card.
domain
Right.
specific output as well.
Right, exactly. We've been playing with the idea of having what's the right way to phrase it? A report card of different categories. So as you're monitoring your production data going, being generated by an LLM, first of all, don't rely on your internal test data. I think users are like, great, I gave it to all my internal team. They tested it, they love it, or maybe they hate it. Can be very different than a customer coming in because LLMs have really a huge surface area of anything you can ask it. Suddenly someone's like, how do you make a pie in your like IT system, right? So just be aware that clients are going to use it in completely different ways than your internal team. But you need to start creating a data set out of representative items from your production data set. Anonymize it if you need to, but then have that be your test suite, right? You have to be a little bit clever about how you evaluate it. One, you could even just have a human, right? Great, I've run my data set, my collected data set at eval. Hey, human, I need you to go check everything's good, but you can start getting more advanced. You can say, okay, well, this is a certain type of questions. Here's how we've graded certain types of answers in the past. Pass fail. I generally recommend a pass fail system. But having that, even if it's triggered only once in a while, it starts to take the place of automated CI/CD, even if it isn't identical. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer. Did that answer your question?
No, that's. I think that is something that anybody who's looking at using LLMs in a system should be thinking about, and I think that is something, and that's why you see Vicey with so many eval startups coming out of it, because that's like problem number one for developers that they would try and solve. So in a world where Copilot, Code, and Cursor become commonplace, and when junior developers are all using sort of LLMs, AI, for example, I saw Gary Tan recently tweeting that 95% of this YC batch is their code is LLM generated. So how do you think about balancing the benefits of using these tools with preserving system level skills or problem solving skills amongst developers? And this question, I guess, is for Sudarshan, because your recent. So I don't know how many of you know this, but Sudarshan put out a LinkedIn post that went viral amongst Indian media, and he got more free press, I think, than many larger companies that spend, I don't know, lakhs and like thousands and thousands of rupees, dollars too. So maybe that's a question for you. How do you sort of think that when you're hiring junior developers, how how do you sort of inculcate that balance of, yes, use these tools, but still ensure that you have the ability to debug, to think at a systems level how it should be designed and should be able to problem solve?
Yeah. So, I mean, firstly, one thing we have seen is a lot of resumes coming where they have built like a beautiful website, like so much functionality. But like when I dive one step deep into, look, how did you do it? Like, okay, like what was how did you design this? Why not this? clueless about any sort of background around just the fundamentals of computer science. So this is becoming increasingly common. That's one.
Mm.
But I feel for the good ones, I always go back to basics and try to understand how strong are your fundamentals. Have you kind of do you even understand like how data is stored? What are the design choices you might make in a fairly complex system? And at the end, these guys who kind of are able to answer those questions have done their like homework. They become 10x engineers. But the others who are just sort of, oh, look, this is an LLM and it's gonna do my whole job. I don't have to learn anything. They're gonna probably go even further behind. So I do feel it's an even more important time to study like the fundamentals so AI can make you faster, but AI cannot still make design decisions for you. Like
Mm.
what we see most of the times with great developers, they make excellent sort of architectures and design decisions, and then the AI is more sort of a autocomplete on top of that that helps them out, and maybe let's say syntax debugging and things like that. So that's how we have been able to filter it out, but it's getting difficult.
Yeah. Amit, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. I was recently going through an interview, and there were. I mean, I felt the same thing that he was saying. What I understood is that AI reduces the mundane tasks, right?
Mm.
Allowing engineers to focus on the problem solving, right? But I was thinking that when I was talking to that person, it is like the immediate thought that I had was that the coding assistants are like GPS for engineers. You still need to know how to drive, but it saves you from getting lost in the syntax jungle. So AI won't replace problem solving, but it will eliminate the grunt work. Think about the boilerplate generation or the smarter auto complete and the instant bug detection. More time for creative engineering. That's my take. But then you should use that as a pair programmer, not a replacement. That is my take. I mean, validating AI's output is key, but AI generated code still needs oversight.
Yeah. So do you see this problem, like Sudarshan pointed out, do you see a very real problem coming up based on your interviews or interacting with sort of freshers and junior developers that they are relying just too heavily on ChatGPT to generate their code?
Yeah. Uh, I mean, again, I don't know. I'm just thinking wildly right now. But AI will only make you as lazy as a dishwasher makes you bad at washing dishes.
Yeah,
I mean, the key is
that's
knowing when to
a good
trust
way
AI and
to.
when to challenge it. Right. So I think one problem that I am seeing is that will AI make developers lazy or reduce your critical thinking ability? I don't think
Yeah,
so. We need to have better mechanisms to educate and enable the younger engineers who are joining.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, some new.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Look, I think it'll make good engineers faster and better, and it'll make bad engineers worse. I think we're hand wringing a little bit, and there's an instinct to hand wring because, like, it's gotten harder for us to tell the difference in an interview because we're looking at someone's code. We're like, that's great code. They're, a bad engineer who isn't curious and thoughtful, and we actually have to talk to them to figure it out. And like, you can't always with 100% accuracy. But this sort of, I think we're mistaking that for thinking, oh, all this AI is going to make everyone worse, and nobody's going to be thinking. No, smart people will still be smart. We just have to find them.
I mean, AI will help you with the speed and efficiency, but it will not help you with the decision making. Right? Developers still need to understand how code review works, how you are going to refine uh, your work. AI can suggest something, but it cannot be a replacement for your engineering judgment.
Yeah, and like I think one of the places where I'm kind of worried people who have not studied the fundamentals will get lost, is AI also becomes wrong very confidently. Like it will give you the wrong answer extremely. Look, this is the way how you should solve it. And a good engineer will be able to say, look, hey, hold on, something is wrong. Maybe it did not consider these three corner cases, right? But a bad one is going to say, oh, let's just copy paste it into the compiler or whatever and see if it works. And I have seen in interviews like people just prompting, and usually my interviews are like, you use ChatGPT, you use whatever you want. This is the
Yeah.
problem you're supposed to solve. And this guy is copy pasting from ChatGPT 3 times. It's something he could have applied his brain for 2 minutes and just solved it. And it's crazy. So that's where I worry. Like if it's confidently wrong, then that could lead to problems down the line. So
Yeah, and I think ChatGPT should definitely be allowed in interviews because that is the future. It's like not like I know when I was in school, I wasn't allowed calculators, and it was pretty stupid because today I only use calculators. But I think the act of using ChatGPT teaches you so much about how the person thinks. Like
yeah.
it gives you so much more information about how the person thinks that you can base your interview decisions on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, even prompting, right? Like there is a
Yeah.
random, very basic prompt versus a very nuanced prompt that
Yeah.
someone hits with all the corner cases. That's easily and identifiable. So
Or like someone just brute forcing their way, trying the same thing again and again and again. 100%. Ryan, were you going to say something?
Oh, I just kind of a not counterpoint, but just an interesting thought is I've actually learned quite a lot from ChatGPT or whatever model I'm using. So I'm largely self-taught. I've been coding for much of my life, but I didn't do it professionally until a little after college. But as a result, and as a result of working oftentimes in smaller startups where weirdly I end up like being the most experienced person, I don't get a lot of exposure to different coding styles. So boilerplating and just seeing how ChatGPT does it has been a really interesting case to like look at other, you know, best practices that I hadn't considered, and using it as a way to have it critique my code has been very, very useful.
Yeah. I think the common stat being thrown out there is that like Codium Cursor Copilot, they help improve productivity in coding by 20-25%. I don't know what you guys have seen, but what are some of the metrics that you guys use to track LLM effectiveness in your software development lifecycle? Or let me rephrase that. What are some of the metrics that you think people should track when using some of these tools in terms of software delivery?
Or is it for me? I mean, I can tell you
Anybody? Sure.
based on my projects that I'm working with, typically the key metrics. I mean, there are always going to be the developer velocity and the other metrics, but with the advent of AI and when you are using AI to solve your problems, I think there are MTD, which is the mean time to detect. The
Hmm.
AI monitoring reduces issue detection time by 50%. Okay. Uh, I mean, I'm just giving you an example. I mean, this is a real world example in our one of our clients. I mean, we just prevented outages before they escalate itself, right? So MTD is very key metric for us. MTTR
Hmm.
as well, right? The mean time to resolve. The
Hmm.
faster RCA and the AI assisted troubleshooting improves resolution time by at least 20 to 30%, right? Then
Hmm.
change failure rate, that is another key metric, because we need to make sure that the use of AI or the AI assisted deployment risk analysis that we do for our clients, it is reducing the rollbacks and the failed changes by at least 25 to 30%, right? The other metric that I typically refer is the noise reduction. Okay.
Hmm.
If typically most of these uh, event needs to be correlated, right? So the AI event correlation cuts the false alerts, by at least 70% by reducing your engineer burnout. Typically, in your ops structure or the SRE structure or the DevOps side of the world, right? It is very imperative that you track and make sure that you are using the alerts noise reduction.
Can you talk more about the noise reduction part?
Sorry. Yeah, I was
Can you
talking.
talk more about the last piece?
Yeah, you were talking about the AI.
Yeah. So can you talk more about the noise reduction piece?
Yeah. What I mean by see, typically what happens is if you have some kind of how many incidents were detected by the AI versus by the humans or after the fact audits, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a rising proportion of AI detected incidents, especially if they are caught earlier in the kill chain. It would indicate success.
Got it.
Most of the time, what happens is that if you are tracking the false alarms or the system logs, or there are certain kinds of well-known uh, indicators, it will just raise that alarm and it will cause burnout or the engineer burnout, right? Because he has to debug that issue. So it is correlated to the overall observability platform, and then you can actually work with that. I mean, you need to reduce that false alarms
Got it.
generated by the alerts.
Got it.
Typically, it is used in the if you want to improve the SOC productivity or those kind of things. Right?
Okay.
The goal is high is always a high true positive and low false positive. Right?
Got it. Sudarshan, Ryan, anything?
Yeah. See, with us, I mean, at least we've not had the chance to measure metrics that way. But I could tell you this, like, very interesting things, right? Firstly, we do not have any sort of full stack or so we do not have any front end or back end or DevOps engineers.
Full stack developers. Yeah.
Everyone is a full stack developer now. So, people typically this is something we've seen before, that people like writing backend code because it's usually more complex and things like that. People do not like writing DevOps, or people do not like writing front end code because they do not believe that it's complicated and it's helping them learn more about computing systems and so on. But now the AI kind of helps them do that quickly, so they go back to doing their backend work, and everyone is a full stack engineer. On top of that, like our product, like one entire SaaS application today used by 30,000 plus people is built by 2 engineers. And we just added a third very recently. So that's how small like the team has been for us. And
Your engineering team is just the 2 founders and 2 engineers?
it used to be up until like January, and then now we have
Okay.
some more, but very small team for the most part, and most of us like spend time in data science basically. But like the full stack engineering is a place where we have seen. I mean, I wouldn't have imagined like 2 people doing so much, but I could definitely say in the pre-AI world, it'll be ridiculous sort of to expect that. But right now, and also I've barely seen like syntax related problems come up. It's usually, look, if you know the language in which it has to be done, you know the kind of services it needs to be called. Syntax is never like, people don't spend a lot of time on syntax, as long as like they only spend time on the architecture and like all of those things. There's a very anecdotal evidence, but this is what I have seen generally in the company.
Yeah, I think the part about only 2 engineers building building a 30,000 uh MAU SaaS app, you're going to see a lot more of these sort of solo or 10-person teams or less than 10-person teams come up. And I think that's a good learning for people who, yes, you are focusing on the data science piece because that is your core product and that is the moat that you're trying to build. But I think your other people's engineering teams are going to become a lot more efficient. And I think, especially in India, we've had this thing of like front-end developer, back-end developer, but at like Fang, there's no such thing. Everyone's just a developer. There's no such back-end front-end thing. But I think Fang is a different level of skill sets required. But now, because of AI, you can quickly cross-train yourself, or you can quickly sort of convert code as needed and become proficient across front-end, back-end, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. And just to gloat a little more, one of these guys is a college dropout. One of these
Oh,
guys is
nice.
one year of experience or something like that. That's how, I mean, at his age, I wonder what I was. I mean, I was definitely not as this fast. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's coming to Ryan's point, right? Like the spikes in talent are gonna get spikier and spikier because like it's it's just a superpower to make sort of the top 1% even more sort of mo- get them more efficient and accomplish more.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
look, going back to your original question, like there's probably two questions that engineering leaders are asking themselves. One is, do I let my team have access to Copilot or whichever one you're looking at? Look, if it was $1,000 a month per person, if it was like 10,000, like sure, do a deep analysis of cost benefits versus like measured outcomes. But like, look, at $20 a month, I can anecdotally say
Yeah.
with a high degree of confidence that's adding value if your privacy controls allow it. Right. Second is, how do I use AI to improve the overall productivity of my team more proactively help? And I would start with bottlenecks, right? I think a lot of people go into these problems thinking, hey, I have this cool hammer. Like, what are the nails I can hit? But
Mm.
I found a lot more success saying like, okay, my problem in my engineering team is like nobody does code reviews. So we have 0 code reviews. I can't get them to code. Okay, well, great. Let's put in an AI that automatically code reviews every single thing you do and force you through that process. Or maybe my teams aren't talking, or like start with the problem and then the AI ideas will come out of it.
That would. Yeah, absolutely. I think somebody has this question from the audience, and it was going to be something I was going to ask as well. But essentially, I think security and data privacy, we touched upon it very briefly in the beginning, but it is top of mind when you're integrating AI into a sensitive development environment. How do you think about challenges around data privacy or proprietary code exposure and overall governance when you're using AI in development environments? Amit, if you want to take this, that'd be great because I know you spent some time thinking about this.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean, see, basically, there are a lot many challenges in the overall data and the training and the evaluation. Okay, what I'm trying to say is that when the actual challenge is to create a large scale, diverse and high quality code data set during the
Mhm.
pre-training phase and defining the standards for high quality code data remains unresolved, right? So you need to make sure that the quality of data from these, if you are using open source uh, code in your training, make sure that the current practices for your source code uh, cleaning typically rely on heuristic text cleaning rules, okay, which mainly address format issues but fall short of ensuring data consistency, diversity, accuracy, and completeness. When I am saying
Mhm.
that, there are advanced models which the GPT family itself supports for data annotation. Their effectiveness in generating consistent and robust code remains challenging due to some factors. But if you're talking about the actual security
Mm.
uh, aspects of it, yeah, I mean, it's a very, I mean, I would, there are a lot of things, lot many things go in the vulnerability information in itself, right? The LLMs are typically trained on your open source data from various internet sources. However, the availability and the quantity of the open source data containing vulnerability information is limited, resulting in an insufficient understanding, right? So it impacts the accuracy and reliability of vulnerability management applications. So the native LLMs require extensive vulnerability data to effectively develop specialized vulnerability management, right?
Yeah.
Then you also need to have, I mean, I have seen scarcity of high quality vulnerability analysis and explanation data in itself, right? So it is, again, what kind of training data you have used, and then the complexity of the vulnerability context information, right? It all goes uh, hand in hand, so to say. And that's what I
Yeah.
have observed in the typical LLM.
Yeah. I think
I
there
hope
are
is
several.
it the same question or
Yeah,
you have
yeah, no,
something?
I moved that question to dismiss that question was answered. I'll just add one more thing, which is that I think Ryan mentioned this earlier, but if you have a paid version of Copilot or if it's running on an Azure instance, then Microsoft claims, and if you can't trust Microsoft, who can you trust? But they claim that it won't be used to train the model. It won't, your data and your code suggestions will not be used to train the model. I think the inverse of that is if you're using the free version of Copilot, then if you accept code suggestions and you give it and and I suggest you check this for yourself, but I think that means that they are allowed to train their future models on your code suggestions, but I would double check this. There are several questions related to testing, and I want to get to that as well. But essentially in software testing, where can we expect to see AI impact in the next 4 to 5 years? And Venkatesh has a question around, I guess, the difference between testing AI models and software application. What's the difference between the two? Maybe we can take the first one, which is how do you see AI impacting software testing in the next 4 to 5 years? Anybody from the panel, if you guys want to go.
Yeah, so for us, like one of the places where I do hope it does a huge impact is like AI. uh, uh, we are in the core business of developing AI models. So I am hoping that there is a lot of AI that's able to test itself. And particularly what I mean is there are multimodal models. So whether it's able to call the right functions at the right point of time, whether it is able to like given end-to-end tasks like customer support, how many sort of today we have benchmarks around maths Olympiad and code forces. Maybe we create benchmarks around customer support. Maybe we create benchmarks around more customer facing challenges that these you could call it a model, you could call it an agent that is trying to solve. That I feel is where we are also. So we have started working on it internally already. So we no longer sort of have basic benchmarks for AI at all, since they are getting more realistic. Our benchmarks are now more catered towards end use cases. So that's one place where I hope AI improves these tests on its own during inference time. The second place, of course, is, I mean, software development. But then in software development, I still like see. I don't understand very well maybe how AI will kind of get that domain knowledge and the sort of understanding of the broader context of what is required by the business and by the product, and like how maybe there is a UX issue here as well, like business leaders and all stakeholders kind of feeding in like where the product should move in what direction, and that might at some point allow it to get domain specific knowledge for end-to-end testing. But uh, that I feel remains unsolved, and I hope to see some progress over there. So
Yeah, I think there was, yeah, I mean, the domain, you cannot discount the domain knowledge aspect at all, because most of the LLMs, especially in the testing side of the world, if you are testing the code generation itself, or if you're testing code generation itself is, I think we were discussing this just before as well, right? So, and that is one of the biggest challenge that we are trying to solve in our in-house tool, Caltia, where we are trying to see. Basically, what we are trying to do is the challenges for high quality test cases are twofold, right?
Mhm.
Encompassing syntactics and semantics aspects. I think that was one of the questions that someone asked. So the specifically at the syntactics level, the test code must be compiled and executed correctly. I think we earlier discussed the same thing, but there is another thing which is so there are two things. One is the syntactics related challenge and the semantics related challenge. Okay, now in unit testing, the generate
Mhm.
test code often contains code elements that cannot be successfully passed by your compilers, right? Like variables or undeclared variable types or non-existent some kind of uh, constants or identifiers, right? Or non-code text like your function explanations or your functional comments or the basically explanatory natural language text, right? So this limits their practical application in the software development, as developers cannot directly utilize these outputs, right? So
Mhm.
therefore the challenge is to guide or constrain your LLMs to reduce text that cause the compilation errors and to enhance the syntax compilation success rate of generated test cases. So there are two solutions to address this challenge, including the model fine tuning, the supervised fine tuning, which is SFT,
Mhm.
which manually collects and annotates your test code with specific formats to fine tune the model for satisfying syntax requirements, and prompt engineering, which involves your instructions in the prompts to guide the model not to output irrelevant code or the text, right?
Mm.
The second challenge is, and that's the tool that we are developing. It does that. Then the second is the semantics related challenge, right? When ensuring that the test code can be compiled successfully, when then need to inspect whether the test cases can cover all the executable parts of the code under test, right? So to achieve comprehensive path coverage, test cases are expected to be variant and diverse, right? So this
Mhm.
involves specifying preconditions such as inputs, external dependencies, environmental states for method which is being tested, right? Now, in order to do that, you can do, so there are many things involved to do this, right? So you can also explore various prompt engineering techniques to
Mm.
provide this kind of solutions to incorporate your preconditions effectively, right? The large scale projects with many dependencies, developers frequently mock the objects to
Mm.
simulate the behavior of the real objects, right? So when applying software engineering specific LLMs to generate these test cases, it is challenging to LLMs to identify the mocking objects automatically and pre-fill the data into the mock objects to simulate the practical behavior. And
Got it.
So Anshul, sorry, I know we're coming up on time, but just a quick counterpoint
Yeah.
because I'm a little more bullish on testing. I'm skeptical. I think that unit testing, like unit testing, is always going to be hard, like you're saying, Amit, because of a lot of this context required. I am more optimistic about integrate end-to-end testing, right? Especially browser-based testing and API testing, right? Like we were paying some humans who didn't know our business 30, 40, whatever, $40 an hour to like write a test to go through a payment flow. And AI can figure that out. Claude 7.3, 3.7, whatever is there. A lot of these payment flows, I think, are plausibly testable by AI.
yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, is what was that the question for me?
Sorry, I
No,
think there was like
I think
there was,
Ryan was yeah, I think Ryan was providing a counterpoint that he is more bullish
Yeah,
on
I mean, API
testing.
test, I
Yeah.
completely agree. Yes, yes, I do agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to get to agents because I know that a lot of people think that 2025 is the year of the agents, and we have a question around this from Cheryl. I think her question is basically around what are the risks of not adapting to an agentic world? For example, a lot of CIOs and a lot of engineering leaders want to learn more about agents, but they I think it's become one of those buzzwords that everyone is using without fully understanding what it means or what it's defined as. I personally define agent as a system where an LM decides the flow or the path of how the application progresses. I know other people have have other definitions. The question is though, what factors should leaders consider before adopting multi-agentic workflows for different use cases within their companies? I don't know if you guys have opinions around this or have seen cases where there's a killer use case where a multi-agentic workflow does work well.
For us, I mean, I've seen like things like marketing automation and sales
Yeah.
automation work very well. So
Can you
just
talk more about smallest application over here? Because I was playing around with it earlier
yeah,
today.
so
Yeah.
awesome. Would love to take your feedback of the call, but basically, the application enables you to build like a fairly um, sort of custom voice agent which can connect with any system, call APIs synchronously or asynchronously during the call. It could be a WhatsApp, it could be an email, it could be a custom CRM or a database call that it can make based on the context. It could answer custom questions, and then also the way it is built, like typically with voice agents, or like if you just give a prompt to an LLM, the problem is it might hallucinate, it might skip steps. You do not, if it's broken, you don't know which part of the prompt is it breaking. So we have
Mhm.
broken this down in some sort of a structured graph, which allows you to make sure that only after a goal is achieved, it moves on to the next node, and on the next node, there is another goal to achieve. So this
Mhm.
allows modeling fairly complex conversations, and we have seen this work extremely well in production use cases. In fact, that's the only thing I've seen to work really well.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time customizing our own SLM. We do not rely on OpenAI or anyone else to do this. Um, but yeah, I think that initial point that Ryan had mentioned about look like 60 to 70% works, but getting to that 99% robustness, it takes that agentic workflow to get there. That's what we have seen. And yeah, our own agentic workflow, great for voice workflow automation, anything real time, even chat works on that. But apart from that, our company benefits from things like marketing. I mean, just let's say you want to do a LinkedIn outreach, right? Like
Mm.
there is an agent that actually creates custom messages based on someone's profile, the product you're selling, opens like LinkedIn and sends them that message, does a bunch of follow-ups for you. Now this is like on top of LinkedIn Navigator, because LinkedIn Navigator is like restrictive and so on. This is
Yeah.
like completely new. Um, yeah, and various such use cases around like follow-ups, sales, like after a meeting, you automatically have created like a proposal for them, completely custom, sending it to them. There are more advanced use cases which we have not yet tried. Things like there is a negotiation agent which kind of
Mm.
negotiates on pricing and so on. So open to exploring, but low-hanging fruits, marketing, sales automation, voice automation. This is where we've seen something work incredibly well.
I have two things to say. Uh, I mean, I just want to augment what you were saying, Sudarshan. Along with, I also think that there is going to be a need for hybrid AI software engineering roles in itself. I think there is going to be a rise of AI augmented DevOps or AI security engineers or ML ops specialists, right? And the second thing is that I think that prompt engineering in itself is coming up as a key skill. You need to understand how to query AI models effectively. It is going to become a core competency for engineers going forward.
Yeah. Also, one thing. I'm just putting the link in the chat, but Dharmesha, who was the CTO and founder of HubSpot, he came up with this little side project called Agent.ai. I find it interesting just because there are many different agents that are listed on this website. So it gives you a good idea of the kind of use cases that you can actually use agents for. And you can also see sort of reviews and all this stuff. So I find this pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Ryan, any last thoughts from you on the topic of agents before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, rule of thumb, multi-agents, using it specifically the underlying framework with which you're developing multi-agent, I think it has been more useful when you have an open-ended chatbot that can kind of do anything, and you need that flexibility to have composable pieces to do anything that the user is asking. When you have a more specific task you're using an LLM for, plausibly you could use multi-agent frameworks, but you lose a little bit of control, and I've found more success just being more sort of intentional by hard coding certain chain of thought elements.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the whole point of using a multi-agentic framework is that each agent is specialized in a particular task and can be given context or a system prompt that's very specific to that task. If it's a very specific problem you're trying to solve, then yeah, it just makes sense to use a single sort of LLM application for that. I think we're at time. Thank you everyone who joined so far, and thank you so much to our panelists, Amit, Sudarshan, and Ryan, for taking time out of what I'm sure must be a super busy schedule to attend this. We'll send the recording to everybody who signed up for this call. And yeah, thanks a lot for sort of attending, and I hope you found this useful.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
thank you everyone.